As one of the biggest selling records of all time, Dark Side of the Moon was a tough act to follow, and the band that created the phenomenon wallowed in lethargy, trying to recapture that magic. How Pink Floyd found inspiration in the lingering spirit of their former leader to make yet another historic composition. Wish you were here. Next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if music ignites your very soul, your heart and soul, this is your place. Videos and interviews with the legends about the greatest songs and albums that you won't find elsewhere. Make sure to subscribe below right now. We'd love to have you. Click the bell so you never miss out on our daily content. Also, don't forget to check out our exclusive content on Patreon. The link is below. You know, it's really tough to follow a phenomenon, whether it's the follow-up to one of the best-selling albums in history, or winning back-to-back Super Bowls, or making a sequel to a blockbuster movie. Now, to the outsider, it might seem like once you've won or you've achieved at such a high level that you've discovered the elusive secret to success and thus can always maintain it. After the landmark impact of the Dark Side of the Moon album in 1973, one would think that the four members of Pink Floyd, as brilliant as they are, had it all figured out. But that wasn't the case at all, and it's not the case in general. Pink Floyd blindly went forward wondering what just happened, with no yellow brick road to travel down, as it were. They were just as human as they'd ever been, maybe more so. Preparation for Wish You Were Here, the album that would presumably pick up where Dark Side of the Moon left off, it proved to be a formidable challenge. The process of returning to that zone of artistic greatness was a painful one. The band was in a reflective mood, thinking about their friend and lost leader, the great Sid Barrett, who suffered from mental illness that forced his departure of the group he named and co-founded back in 1965. And they grappled with their own internal struggles. The first piece of music for the upcoming LP was a tribute to Barrett, created in a 9-part opus titled, of course, Shine On You Crazy Diamond. They also composed a song that conveyed the band's loathing of the record business called Welcome to the Machine. Shine On You Crazy Diamond is often regarded as one of the greatest Pink Floyd showpieces, and Welcome to the Machine is another inspired triumph. On one particular afternoon, guitarist and co-lead vocalist David Gilmour was playing a riff on a 12-string guitar that caught bassist co-lead Roger Waters' attention. Gilmour had a habit of playing a catchy riff while warming up and getting into the zone for a recording session, and Waters would often stop him from playing and enthusiastically ask him, "What is that you're playing? It's great." We heard that I hear that a lot from artists. I heard it from Rob Halford just the other day. Most of the time, Gilmour would inform Waters that they couldn't use the riff that he was playing as it was someone else's creation. But on this particular occasion, when Roger's curiosity was piqued by what David was playing, he was pleased to find out that it was an original riff that David had actually just invented. Gilmour's country-flavored E minor to G to A7 sus4 chord sequence sparked the completion of a tune that Waters was writing that had Sid Barrett in his thoughts. Roger called the song Wish You Were Here. It would evolve into one of the rare, true Waters and Gilmour collaborations where the two rock stars worked side by side to develop the song's structure in the recording studio, and as we all well know, from the outside looking in, Roger Waters and David Gilmour together was just the personification of absolute musical perfection. Wish You Were Here exalted into one of Pink Floyd's most beloved tracks and one of the most eloquent and moving Roger Waters compositions, period. The lyric sheet for Wish You Were Here was an extension of a poem Roger had written about Sid Barrett's fall from reality and his bout with schizophrenia.
So you think you could tell?
Exacerbated by the frequent intake of LSD, including acid-laced coffee that his friends would give him. I mean, as the saying goes, With friends like that, who needs enemies? The song was apparently also an exclamation of Roger's personal struggles with detachment, the feeling that most people go through at one time or another. For Roger, Wish You Were Here was a commentary about how people cope with myriad daily obstacles by withdrawing physically, mentally, and emotionally. So you think you can tell heaven from hell.
Heaven from hell.
Blue skies from pain. Can you tell a green field from a cold steel rail? A smile from a veil. Do you think you can tell?
Do you think you can tell?
Soul galvanizing rock and roll poetry for sure. The concept of Wish You Were Here, the album and the title track, was based on absence. At the forefront was Roger Waters' feeling that camaraderie was absent within the band. The theme is so obviously and strikingly illustrated on the album art. I mean, the image on the inner sleeve of a man diving into water, absent of a splash. And of course, the iconic album cover designed by Aubrey Poe Powell, with two businessmen shaking hands while one of them is on fire, symbolizing a deal absent of honesty, with one of the businessmen getting burned in the transaction. Means more today than it ever has. It's one of the most compelling album covers of the entire rock and roll era. More than worthy of the dynamic and just flawless cover art from the band that really set the bar for all bands in that regard. Speaking of dynamic, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. The glasses that I wear on the regular. Zenni frames are dynamic and stylish, and you can create your own statement when you go to zenni.com and design your own look with myriad of choices. Check it out. So the most profound absentia was the departure of Sid Barrett, of course. Sid may have physically left Pink Floyd, but his spirit dwelled within the psyche of Waters, Gilmour, Mason, and Wright. Peter Jenner, Pink Floyd's original manager, convinced Barrett to book some studio time at the Great Abbey Road in August 1974, but the sessions evaporated after 3 fruitless days. It was obvious that Sid had lost his once dazzling spark for good. 5 months later, Barrett's old bandmates could still feel his presence at Abbey Road, where they were recording Wish You Were Here. Here's something to ponder. Maybe it was Sid's absence, the absence from Pink Floyd, from reality, and from himself that haunted the hallways, echoing off the walls like the sinister guitar riff from Sid's own Lucifer Sam. That ultimately changed the Wish You Were Here sessions from ineffectual frustration to a rush of inspiration. Alan Parsons, the man who brilliantly engineered Dark Side of the Moon, and who we've of course interviewed for this show many times, declined to work with the band on Wish You Were Here. Brian Humphries, who had worked with Pink Floyd on their 3rd studio LP, More, was then brought in to be at the studio controls. Humphries echoed the band's difficulty to get out of the post-Dark Side of the Moon funk and kindle new energy for Wish You Were Here. In a 2014 interview, actually, Humphries recounted, and I quote, this is what he said, "There were days when he and the band didn't do anything. I don't think they knew what they wanted to do," Humphries confided. "We had a dartboard and an air rifle, and we'd play these word games, we'd sit around, get drunk, go home, and return the next day. That's all we were doing until suddenly everything started falling into place when Roger Waters came up with the overriding concept for the album." End of quote. Roger Waters arranged his lyrical flow within Gilmour's riff, and the co-leaders of Pink Floyd came together to construct the chorus for Wish You Were Here. How I wish you were here.
How I wish you were here.
We're just 2 lost souls swimming in a fishbowl year after year.
Swimming in a fishbowl, year after year.
Running over the same old ground, what have we found? The same old fears, wish you were here.
Wish you were here.
Now, Pink Floyd was not a singles-driven band, as we all know, but they played the game as much as they needed to. And although they released 27 singles from 1967 through 1994, We don't think about Pink Floyd in terms of their greatest hits. In fact, when they released Echoes, the best of Pink Floyd in late 2001, it was like the strangest greatest hits album in the history of the concept. I don't know if you felt the same way. I mean, I remember my friend picked me up. I think we were going to a movie. And it was right when that had come out. Again, this was 2001, so it was before the iPod and digital music took over. All of a sudden, I heard Arnold Layne and Wish You Were Here and Jug Band Blues back to back to back. I was so confused. I remember I asked him if he had his Floyd albums going back and forth in his 6-disc changer in his car. Remember when he had those? He showed me how he'd picked up Floyd's greatest hits, and I remember just looking at him in amazement, like, why would you ever go and do that? Pink Floyd, you can't listen to them on a greatest hits album. There's nothing like the experience you get listening to an entire Pink Floyd album, just letting it flow from track to track, especially on vinyl, where you get the full effect of the visceral and intellectual stimulation. It is definitely a lost art in today's fast food, homogenized, playlist on shuffle, fallen world that we live in right now. I've made it my duty to introduce this way to my own kids. I bought them Discmans and CDs so that they can get the full effect of the album and have to listen to it one after the other. On the vinyl LP version of Wish You Were Here, the cut opens with the sound of a radio turning from the previous track on the record, which is Have a Cigar. And switching across the station playing Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony, then stopping on David Gilmour playing his wispy, spellbinding acoustic intro. Gilmour explained that the transition from Have a Cigar to Wish You Were Here on the album sequencing was meant to sound like the previous track getting sucked into the radio with someone sitting in a room playing the guitar really along with the radio. The transition signified the record's larger theme of the band remembering Sid Barrett and a nostalgic deliberation on their shared journey as Pink Floyd. A sequencing, of course, is a brilliant component of most of the Pink Floyd albums. Pink Floyd and their production team were just masters of auditory trickery, inventing and directing effects that created a vivid illusion for the incomparable theater of the mind. In addition to the opening of the track, another good example of the sound innovation on a Pink Floyd record can be heard at the end of Wish You Were Here. As Gilmour's final solo crossfades, the sound effect of a gusting windstorm gradually increasing in strength segues into Shine On You Crazy Diamond Part 6. It's not actual wind, of course, but the effect sure sounds real, and it's riveting. Realism is another clever component of Pink Floyd's records. Laughter, coughing, wheezing, cryptical conversation, other human noises muted in the background that were not fabricated can be heard on many Floyd records, especially Dark Side of the Moon, Animals, The Wall, and Wish You Were Here. Specifically on the LP version of Wish You Were Here, you can detect a cough at 26 seconds in, and a sniff at 31 seconds. There's faint breathing at 35 seconds. From 37 seconds to 42 is when the guitar kicks in. Now, rumor has it that at the time of the recording, Gilmour's heavy smoking habit caused him to cough during the first guitar solo, and that he quit smoking after he heard how the coughing in the playback was picked up during the mixing process. The coughing and breathing were likely intentionally left in the recording to bring more authenticity and character to the emotional weight of Wish You Were Here. Something that I can promise you would never hear on a mainstream song of today, where the human element is overcome by technology. David Gilmour has affectionately referred to Wish You Were Here as a simple little country song with those twangy acoustic licks. With the country overtones, Waters and Gilmour wanted to incorporate a country fiddle to the arrangement. And it just so happened that jazz violinist Stefan Grappelli and his violin collaborator, Yehudi Menuhin, were invited to perform on the track to countrify the track even more. Now, Menuhin declined, but Grappelli accepted the invitation to arrange a session to play on the song. Now, unfortunately, Grappelli's violin part is very faint. You can barely hear it if you listen really carefully at the 5-minute and 21-second mark of the song on the LP. Roger and David thought it would be an insult to credit Grappelli on the record's liner notes because his part is practically inaudible. But he did receive his agreed-upon session fee. There is an alternate version, though. I'm sure some of you have heard of the recording where you can hear Grappelli's performance in the instrumental break after the second verse into the third verse. The Roger Waters-David Gilmour saga is, of course, one of rock music's most notorious soap operas. It seems whatever acrimony prevented them from being close friends was tossed aside for the greater good of their art, at least until they could no longer stomach each other. Gilmour had an incredible feel for the lyricism of Roger Waters, though, no matter how deep the words were that came out of Roger's subconscious. Wish You Were Here was presented over Gilmour's melody, but David vocalized Roger's lyrics in the first person, not as if he were reading from a script written by a third person. I mean, his vocal performance on Wish You Were Here was an amazing, sensational artistic transference. The song's instrumental arrangement was enriched by an RL mix of a Steinway piano and a mini Moog performed by Richard Wright. Wright's contribution to Wish You Were Here becomes more prominent as the arrangement gathers elements to bolster the track's central riff. Richard's piano accents augment the country vibe of Wish You Were Here, especially in the chorus. Wright's musicianship and essence helped create a progressive country rock composition, if you will. The synthesizer modernized the underbelly of Gilmour's straightforward acoustic structure. I really love the idea of David Gilmour scatting in the outro that leads into the windstorm at the song's finale. That was an ingenious improvisational touch for sure, where David uses a facet of his vocal talent to add to the song's musical breadth and depth. Wish You Were Here is Pink Floyd's most covered song, actually, including some really interesting and genre-bending renditions. The band Sparkle Horse made a really cool, sparse, piano-led version of Wish You Were Here. That was in 2005. Actually featuring a background vocal by Radiohead's lead singer Tom York. Wyclef Jean reimagined Wish You Were Here into a soulful hip-hop track that was built around David Gilmour's melody.
Same old fears. Wish you were here.
Wyclef sings near the end of the song before explaining how important the music of Pink Floyd was in his upbringing.
My brother tuned me into rock, put me up on Pink Floyd, a band from the British blocks.
The most popular recent cover of Wish You Were Here is the heartfelt performance by Ed Sheeran at the closing ceremony of the 2012 Olympics in London. Ed was joined on stage by Pink Floyd's drummer Nick Mason and Genesis guitarist Mike Rutherford. Sheeran's performance was so convincing, his legion of young fans actually thought it was an original Ed Sheeran composition.
So you think you can tell heaven from hell?
Because of the social media frenzy, after Sheeran's performance at the London Olympics, Wish You Were Here was released as a single in some parts of the world in 2012. Its highest crossover success was found in Norway, where I believe the single peaked at number 18. It was a platinum single in the UK with over 600,000 sold in spite of its unremarkable peak at number 68, and the single achieved double platinum status with over 100,000 sold in Italy. In America, Album Rock Radio played the track in power rotation in 1975, as the format did with many of Pink Floyd's songs, and set the song up for immortality on classic rock playlists everywhere. In a 2012 documentary about making the Wish You Were Here album that has sold over 20 million copies at this point around the world, Roger Waters amplified the meaning of the title track when he said, and I quote, It's to encourage myself not to accept a lead role in a cage, but to go on demanding of myself that I keep auditioning for the walk-on part in the war. Roger Waters' enduring resolution has certainly inflamed passion in all of us. That's why Wish You Were Here is such a timeless, definitive Pink Floyd classic. Got me through some tough times in my youth, like many of you, I'm sure. I remember listening with my headphones to this song and just being transported from the cruel world that I was growing up in and experiencing, and being tucked into Roger and David's just beautiful blanket of comfort, beauty, and healing. It's a new standard because all of these elements that I've mentioned. The music can stand on its own, as can the lyrics as pure poetry. It's one of those exalted songs that the most legendary artists and writers wish that they'd written, which is why it will continue to elevate new listeners, whether now or 500 years from now. Running over the same old ground, what have we found? Hey, thanks for watching. Leave us a comment about one of the world's greatest bands, one of the greatest artists ever, Pink Floyd, and this beautiful partnership of Waters and Gilmour. What do you remember about the song? I want to hear your memories. What does this song mean to you? Please tell us in the comments. If you like our content, we'd love to have you as a subscriber. Click the subscription button, the sub button, so that you never miss out. And check us out on Patreon at the link below for the white glove treatment as we are updating our benefits there. Help us keep the music alive. It's so important. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. See you soon.